Aloha, Richard Halverson here, and this is ITS128, and we are in Chapter 7. And so today I would like to get us started on some of the Chapter 7 quizzes. So if we look at where we are in the textbook, here we are, Chapter 7 and lists. And I think in this video I'll try to get up to 7.2.3, so we will have covered the first three quizzes here. So what I did this time is I copied the quiz questions, and you can do this too. And I have them written here, as you can see. And so I'm going to start by going through the textbook, going through the text here, the chapter, and go through. And when I come across some information or come across a section where one of the quiz questions is explained, I will point that out. And so today we're gonna go up to about 7.2.3, I guess, somewhere around here. All right, so let's start out here. I'm gonna try to do something here where I can show both. I can get this over here like this and have the quiz questions over here on the right. All right, so I think you can see that. All right, so a list, we're talking about lists here. A list can store a collection of data of any size. If you're familiar with any other programming languages, like C# or Java, you may know about lists. We have lists in those languages, or in other languages we have arrays. Actually, in all languages we have arrays, and lists go a long way of providing the capabilities for both for arrays also. Although there are separate arrays in there is a separate array facility in Python, but we aren't going to be covering that, at least this time. So let's see what's next here. All right, so list basics. You should watch this video note. It does a good job of explaining very clear audio. And so here's some examples of some lists. This is how you create an empty list. You just say list equals, and we use variable names, and an empty list just is indicated by this left and right square bracket. This statement here is how you initialize a list that's got 3 elements in it, 3 integers to be exact. This is index number 0, index number 1, index number 2. Here's a way of initializing a brand new list with 2 elements. This is element number 0, and this is element number 1. As you know that the elements start at 0 and go up from there. This list contains string elements, and so if we go to the quiz questions, we see the first one here is write a statement that defines plist as a list containing exactly these elements in order: spam, eggs, and Vikings. Okay, so that looks just like this, except for this here would be plist, and instead of red and green, we are defining spam, eggs, and Viking. So there will be 3 elements in plist. In this example, there's only 2 elements. This is a way of creating a list that's got elements in the range of 3 through 6, 3 inclusive, not 6 inclusive. So 3, 4, and 5, and 6 is not included in this And here's a list of characters. And the way we can distinguish this is there's only one so-called element in here, and it's accepted or defined as A, B, C, and D. So this is a list that's got these 4 characters in it. So I think we know enough now to define a list that's got all of these elements in P list. This would be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. This one here is tax rates. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements in it. And this one here is a statement that defines a list containing these elements. All right. So if we were to actually, so let's move on to the, okay, here we see we can have lists containing elements of mixed types. So let's see what the quiz looks like. We know what the quiz looks like. Question 1 would be something like a list called P list. So we would just do P list. Make it even easier. We can do copy this, copy, paste, equals, space, left bracket, right bracket, and inside left bracket, right bracket, we put these 3 elements, copy, paste, and it would look something like that. You can try that. This one, same thing, P list. We'll just put that there. And this is going to be 10, 20, 30, 40. We can just put this here like that. And replace this dot, dot, dot with 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Something like that. In this case, we've got this thing called tax rates, which you can put here, equals, and we can just copy these things here. Copy, paste, just like that. And let's see, I just want to check here because sometimes we are recording, okay. Just checking. And next would be something like write a statement that defines the variable, denomination. So that looks like that's the name of the list. Do a copy, paste, equals, put the left and right bracket in there, and we can just copy this, copy, don't include that last comma, copy, paste, and it looks something like that. All right, so that takes care of the first quiz. Let's take a look at the second quiz here, which is this one, 7.2.2, and let's move on. And 7.2.1 is list as a sequence. Okay, so it's strings and lists are sequence types. They're sequence types. A string is a sequence of characters, while a list is a sequence of any elements. And so here are some common operations we can use on sequences. So common operations for sequences S. So we have a sequence called S. And so there's an operation here which is X in S. So this would be an expression which would be either true or false. And it's true, of course, if X is an element inside S. X not in S, that's also an expression. These are expressions. It's true if X is not in S. S1 plus S2 concatenates the 2 sequences. So first we have the elements of S, and then following that we have in the same list elements of S2, S1 and S2. This is a way of copying a sequence of S n times. So if we have 1, 2, 3, and n is 2, it'd be, and S is 1, 2, 3, and if n is 2, the final result of this expression would be either this way or this way, would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is the ith element of the sequence. This is a slice of the sequence from the ith element to the j-1 element, as it shows here. And this is the length of S. This is the smallest element in S, so it looks through all the elements of S and returns the smallest one. This one returns the largest one. This will sum up all the numbers in S, and a for loop, of course, you can do a for loop traversing from left to right in S. And these are some comparisons which you can use this to compare two sequences. So let's look at some functions for list, and this would be this quiz here. There's two questions to the next quiz. The first one is, if we formally define the term corresponding element, we're going to define the term corresponding element as the first element and the last element of the list are corresponding elements. The second element and the second to the last element are corresponding elements. The third element and the third to the last element are corresponding elements, and so on. So if we have something like a list equals S equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, let's say that, then the 1 and the 6 are corresponding elements, the 2 and the 5 are corresponding elements, and the 3 and the 4 are corresponding elements. So you can see that. Given that the variable A is associated with a list, so a list is called A, write an expression for the corresponding element of A of I. Okay, so if A is 0, then the corresponding element would be, you could call it -1, or you could call it 0, 1, or you could call it, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A of I, let's say this is A. This is this A. But we don't know how many elements are in A. We could actually figure it out by the length of A. But anyway, so this is the first question. So given this, we want to figure out what the corresponding element is. And then given a list named this, write an expression whose value is the length of this. Well, length of this is simple. We just saw that. Do we have length in here? Yes, the length is right here. So we will use that one for the second question. So here's some examples. This is the length of the list is going to be 5, the max, the min, the sum. There is this random function which you can use to randomize the elements in the list, and so on. So let's take a look at the quiz questions here. Question 1 is, as we know, we informally define the term corresponding element. The first element and the last element are corresponding elements. Second and second to the last, third and third to the last. And given A, write an expression for the corresponding element of A. Well, we can do something like, we have the length function, so we can do A, and so if we look over here, the length is 6, and we want element number, we would want the element, if, this is getting to be a little confusing, so I'm going to pop this back up. I'm going to do test, get this out of here, and I'm going to say A is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll just do that, and I will print A of 1, and and that'll print out the first element. Now I want to see what the corresponding element is. That would be print, and let's try a of -1. I think that'll work. So let me save this and pull up a command line here. Here's my, let's start over again. CMD, and this is on the desktop here, right up here at the top. Users, rich desktop. So I'm going to do CD C : users, me, desktop, and we've got our test Python program there. And so I'm going to run it, Python test.py, and we got 2 and 6. Those are corresponding elements, 2 and 6, but we don't know what I is. So this is the 0th element, and we want the length of A is 6. So A of 5. So what happens if we do length of A -1? Does this do it? Let's see. No, let's do a variable here. Let's put in some variables. I equals 1. And so let's put I here. And let's put I here. And let's run this and see what this looks like. Save it. And this is 2 and 6, just like that. Let's make I 2 and run it. And this is 3 and 5. Are those corresponding elements? 3 and 5? 3 and 5, 2 and 6. Oh, wait a minute. This is not. Oh, this is not right. 2 and this. Oh, this is now 2. Let's see. 1 and 6, 2 and 5, 3 and 4. If I is 0, oh wait, never mind. I is what is this? What are we doing here? I is, okay, A of 0. Let's go back to this. What happens if I is 0? It should be 1 and 6, right? Because A of I is okay, let's see if this works. This is out of range. Oh, 0, length of 0 minus I. Length of A. Oh, okay, let me hold on a second here. Okay, so here we have, this was out of range because if we have the length of A, which is 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 when I is 0, 5 minus 0 is 5, and there is no A of 5 because it should, A of 4 is the biggest. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait a minute, no. Oh, the length of A is 6. The length of A is 6, so 6 minus 0 is 5, and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That 0. Oh, the length of 6. I can't subtract. 6 minus 0 is 6. So there is no A of 6. That's why this says. That's why this is out of range. So let's try if we do I of 1. that would be this element. And if we run that, we get 2 and 6. So 2 is, if we're looking at the I is 1 and this is 2, the corresponding element would be 5. And this says it's 6. So we can just subtract 1 from that. And let's see what it is now. And now we get 2 and 5. 2 and the corresponding element of 5. So 2 and 5, those are corresponding elements. If we add 7, 8, 9, and let's try this, we get 2 and 8. So 2 and 8, yes, those are corresponding elements. Let's try this to be 2 and run this. We get 3 and 7, so 3 and 7 are corresponding elements. So this is the element A of I, and this would be the corresponding element right here. A of length of A minus I minus 1. Anyway, okay, so that should work for that. So it's going to be something like this. Something like that. Copy, paste. Something like that. All right, what's the next question here? Given a list named playlist, write an expression whose value is the length of playlist. Well, we know that already. That would be, oops, I didn't mean to go out here. So we are in here, functions for lists. And if we look at functions, shoot. Here, length, this one. So this is the length of S. And instead we want the length of playlist. So we use this function. All right, so that takes care of the second quiz. That takes care of this quiz. Let's see what's next. What's quiz number 7.2.3? 12 questions, looks like. Okay, so the first question is, given a variable p list that refers to the list, let's go and look at the quiz questions here. So given a variable p list that refers to 34 elements, write an expression that refers to the last element. Okay, well, that's pretty easy. Second question is last element. Okay, given the variable that is named p list, that a variable named p list has been defined and refers to a non-empty list, write a statement that associates its first element with 3. So basically, we're just assigning, we have a list. We want to assign the first element, which is the 0th element. Assign that to 3. Yeah, it's pretty easy. Associate true with a variable has dupes if the list L1 has any duplicate elements. That is, if there are any elements that appear more than once. Okay, so this is the most difficult question of the quiz. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to approach that. We'll get back to that. So it's a variable that has dupes, and if there are duplicates, in other words, if we got something like list 1 is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then has dupes would be 0 because there's no duplicates. But if it's something like this, then it does have a duplicate. So if it looks like this, then has dupes would be true. Okay, so we'll get back to that. Question 4 here is assume a list of integers salary steps contains 5 elements defined, and write a statement that changes the last element to this amount. Okay, so we just need to be able to refer to or reference the last element, which is salary steps. This would be salary steps this. That's the last element. All right, that's question 4. What's question 5? Given a list variable plist and it's non-empty, write an expression that refers to the first element of the list. The first element, well, that's the 0th element. The next question is question 6. Assume that the variable plist has been defined and refers to a list. Write a statement that assigns the next to the last. Write a statement that assigns the next to the last element of the list. That's just something like plist. The next to the last element of the list would be -2. So if we're talking about this list right here, for example, the next to the last element is this one, and that's -2. That's the reference is -2. This is -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7. That's one way to reference the elements of the list. Or, of course, you can reference them 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But we want to refer to the second to the next to the last element, which should be this one, and we can reference that by p-2, by the -2 index. Question, that was question 6. This is question 7. Assume plist has been defined and it's non-empty. Write a statement that increases the first element by 10. So we just have to access the first element, and we want to increase that by 10. We want to add 10 to this. That's pretty easy. Question 8 is assume a variable plist refers to a 12-element list, 12 integers, and assume that k refers to some value between 0 and 6. Write a statement that assigns 15 to the list element whose index is k. Well, you know, the only reason they specify 12 and they specify giving k a range, the reason they do that is because they want you to know that k is not going to be greater than 12. It's not going to be greater than 11. It's going to be in a valid range for indexing an element in this list. So we're just going to assign, it's an assignment statement, so 15 is going to be on the right side of an equal sign. And the list element whose index is k, well, that's, you know, plist k equals, you know, this. All right, that's question 8. Question 9 is plist, 12 elements. K refers to an integer between 2 and 8. Same idea here. Assign 9 to the element just after the element in the plist whose index is k. So we are not assigning something to k, index of k. We are not assigning something to plist of k equals something, 9 specifically. It's not plist k, it's the one just after plist, just after k. K refers to some integer. Assign 9 to an element just after the element who's in plist whose index is k. So we're talking about this one. That's just after plist of k. All right, question 10 is we've got a variable named plist. It's a list of 12 elements. K refers to an integer between 2 and k as before. And this time we want to assign 22 to the element just before the element in plist whose index is k. So again, they give you the range of possibilities of k to let you know that you're not going to go too low or too high. This has got 12 elements, so we're talking about elements 0 through 11, indexed 0 through 11. And so if k is 2 to 8, we want to assign the value 22 to the element just before k. So we want to assign something to not this, be this, 22 goes here. Not this, but the one just before this, so that would simply be that one. All right, question 11 is we've got P list. It's got only 5 elements. J is an integer between 0 and 3. So it's in the range of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. P list has got indexes 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 elements. And J is 0 or 1 or 2 or 3. Write a statement that associates a new value with the element of the list indexed at J. This new value should be equal to twice the value of the next element in the list. Okay, so next element after the index one that's indexed by J. So this is so we're talking about twice the value of the next element. Element after element indexed by J. So we've got an element P list of J, and we want actually the element after J, so that's +1. It's the one after J. And we want 2 times that, twice the value, so that's times 2. And we are going to, okay, so and we want this to be, we're assigning this equal to this. So we're assigning a new value to P of J. We're assigning a new value to this. And that value is going to be the element just after J, which is this, multiplied by 2, twice the value. So it's going to look something like that. This last question here, assume that playlist refers to a non-empty list and all its elements are integers. Write a statement that associates a new value with the first element of the list. In other words, the 0th element. Playlist of 0. So we're talking about assigning something to this, the 0th element, right? Because it's the first element of the list, associates a new value with the first element of the list. That's this element. So this is going to be equal to something. And the new value should be twice the value of the last element. Well, what's the last element? The last element, as we learned, which we observed earlier, the last element is this playlist -1, index -1. So that's the last element. But we want the value to be twice. We want to assign twice the value of the last element of the list. So you multiply it by 2 again, just like in the last quiz question. All right, so these are all the quiz questions. I guess the most difficult we're looking at is the one that indicates if there's any duplicate elements. So let's go look at the chapter here. Let me go back. And we are in 7.2.3, aren't we? Yes. 7.2.3. Is that right? What's this? Ah, that's the quiz. Okay, we already went through that. Okay, here we are, 7.2.3, and it's the index operator. So we know this already, pretty much. So this is how you reference the a particular element in the list, a specific element in the list at that index. They're numbered. Indexes are ranged 0 to the length of my list, because we're talking about my list, minus 1. So this is the range, 0 to whatever the length is minus 1. And that makes sense if we're talking about this. If this list is, the length of this list is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The length of this list is 7. So we're talking about the length of list 1 is 7. And so the range is 0 to 6. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the range, 0 to 6. Okay, that's all that says. And here's a nice diagram. My list is you can think of it as an address or a pointer to the beginning of the list. And then there are these indexes here, and they're one right after the other. Index 5 this is my list index 5, and that's this value. So now you notice this is the 6th element as we start counting at 0. There's 10 elements in this list. So this is known as, this variable is an indexed variable because it's indexed. And this here adds my list 0 plus my list 1 and stores it into my list 2. My list 2 takes my list 0, which is the first element, plus the second element, stores it into the third element. Here's a loop which assigns 0 to the first element, 1 to the second element, all the way up to 9 to the 10th element. And basically, we're just assigning the index value. See, so that's what this does. This does a range between 0 and the length of the list minus 1, so 0 through 9. And this variable is going to go from 0 to 9. And when it's 0, it's going to assign 0. When it's 1, it's going to assign 1, and so on. And if you go over or under, you get an index error. So this would give you an index error because this is going to go from 0 to 10, because the length of the list is 10, and the last time this loop iterates, the last time a pass executes, I is equal to 10. So we need to do that. All right, so this is how we refer. We saw this earlier. This is how you refer to this last element in the list, 21. We print the last element of the list, we get 21. This is the third to the last element of the list, 1, 2, 3. So that's why it displays out 2. All right, self-check. We still do not have enough information to do that third quiz, do we? Let's go on. We don't have that information to do the third quiz. Slicing, start list slicing. Slicing. So this is a way to get another list out of a list. Let's say you have a list like this, and you you just want this range. You want to know what that range is. This is from the second element. This is from index 2 to index 4 and to the index just before the fourth one. So index 2 is 0, 1, 2. So it starts with 2, and then it goes to 3, and then it does not go to 4. This is 4. It goes up all the way up to, but does not include 4. So we're talking about these two elements. This is 2 and 3 and not 4. So that's why we see this displayed out. Or this is the range. These are the elements in this list. Here we're going from 0 to 5, but we're doing every other one. It's the step. So 0, skip this. 1, skip this. 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we skip the last one. So it's going to be this one and this one. Oh, and this one. Is that right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, it will include 9. So it's going to include, oh, never mind. Wait a minute. We're doing every other one. So it's doing this one, skipping this one, skipping this one, this one. 0 through 5 is 0. If it's just 0 through 5, it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to go up to there. It's going to not include the fifth one. 0 through 5 goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 0 through 5 goes to that, but we're skipping every other one. So we're going to skip this one and skip this one. So we end up with just 2, 3, and 7. No, 2, 3, 2, 3, and 9. No, 2, 5, and 9, because we skipped 3 and 7. That's what this is, 2, 5, and 9. All right, we still don't know enough yet, do we? Oh, this is a way to refer to everything up to 2, skipping 2, because this means start at the beginning. This means end at the end. So this is item 3 all the way to the end. So this does include the last element. This does include the first element. All right. This goes from 1 to the third of the last element. So this is 1, and this is the -1, -2, -3. This is the third of that last element, but remember we don't ever include the last one. It's the one just before that. So the one just before that is the 5. So this is 3 and 5, which is why it's that. All right, we still don't know enough to do that. Let me find 4 in not. Where am I? I'm looking for first thing. Comparing lists. I'm looking for count function works. All right, here's a function we can use. Count function returns the number of times X appears in the list. So what we can do is we can do a loop. We can loop through all the elements, and for each element, we count the number of times that element appears in the entire list. So if we have something like this list, for example, say we have this list, let's loop through from the first element all the way to the second to the last element, and then let's see if any of these has a duplicate within the list. So does 1 have a duplicate? No, it doesn't. Does 2 have a duplicate? No. Does 3 have a duplicate? No. Does 4 have a duplicate? Yes, it does have a duplicate. Look, there's another 4 here. So this one would, the count of this element, the count would be 2. So this is the number of times the element appears. So that would be a good way to test. Actually, I think another way where we don't need this count function is we can just do a loop starting with the first one and see if there's another one of the first ones in here. And and then do the second one, see if there's another 2 in here. And then take the 3, see if there's another 3 in here. Take the 4, see if there's another 4 in here. And there is. So that would work also. Let me write a little program here. I'm going to copy this out. And I'm going to go over here to my test. And let's see. Let me just add let me just add a 4 here, right there. So when we get to 4, we'll see that there's another 4 in there. So if we do something like 4 for each element in A, let's see. Let's see. Yes, in. Where's in? Where? Let me find in. Let me go back to here. I think just in will work. Let me here. The in operator. Okay. 2 in list 1 is true. So we're checking list 1 to see if there's a 2 in it. And it looks at all the elements. So we can just say, is 2 in any of these? So let's try to use that. All right, so for let's do 4 I. Let's do the range. For I in the range of the length of the list -1. For that range, because we only need to go up to the second to the last one. So this is going to go from 1 to 8. And just to confirm that, I'm going to print A of I. I'm just going to start by doing that. And if we run this, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 7, 8. Okay, so we got the whole thing excluding the last one. Okay, so what we want to do is for each one, we can look if A of I is in A of I plus 1 all the way to the end, like that, there. So this is going to go, checks to see if A of I is in this string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print this. Print, and I'm going to go is A of I in if is that in since I'm using commas, I don't need to put spaces here. If print is A and I in, and then let's do this this thing. This is a string. Okay, I'm going to do that. And if A of I is in A of I, then I want to say has dupes is true. And I can initialize this. I'm just going to initialize that it has dupes is false. We started by assuming it's false. And then we do this loop. We loop through all of them. And this printout is just to see that we're looking at the right thing. And this is going to test if that is in this string, then set has dupes to true. So I'm going to run this. And we see the first thing we're asking is 1 in, you notice we're skipping the first one, is 1 in this? Well, the answer is no. Is 2 in this? So the first one is 1 in this? And the next time we're doing this, we're saying is 2 in this? So is 2 in the rest of the string? Is 3 in the rest of the string? Is 4 in the rest of the string? Ah, it is. So there's the duplicate. And 5 is not, 6 is not, 7 is not, 8 is not, 9 is not. We actually could stop. After we did find a duplicate, we could stop and skip all that. But that's a matter of making it more efficient or not. We don't need to worry about efficiency today. So it looks like something like this would probably work. So we're talking about, and we're still past, we still had to use something that we were going to learn later to do an earlier quiz. Let's just go back to that quiz. And we are talking about number 3, quiz number 3. Question 3. It's this one. Associate true with a variable called has dupes if the list 1 has duplicate elements. So we would start out by saying has dupes equals false. That'll work. And then we'd want to loop through all of them, like for I in the range of the length of list 1 minus 1 in that range. We want to skip the last one. Okay. And we got to have a colon. And then here we got to do if list 1 of I is in list starting with the one just past I all the way to the end. If this ith element is in any of the rest of the string, then has dupes is true. So something like that should probably work. All right, well, that's probably, so I think we got everything here. I went through all the rest of them here. Assume a list of integers, salary steps, contains 5 elements. How do you set the last element? So we're talking about setting the last element minus 1, that's the last element, equal to this 16,000 number. And so I think I've covered all of these other questions here in this when I went through all of the questions here. So I think I've given you, I have finished the first 3 quizzes here. I've given you information to tackle the first 3 quizzes. Oops. These up to here. And so I'm going to end this video, and I will come back right after this and start the next video on the rest of the quiz questions. So thanks for watching.